Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Full Throttle Finance, a financial literacy podcast geared towards taking complex financial topics and breaking it down into fun, relatable discussions. My name is Felicia, CEO at Clean Bee Consulting, and today, maybe not so much of the motorsport talk, but I am going to be bringing you a super special, to me at the very least, two-part 1-year firm anniversary episode. So we'll go through part 1 this week, and then next week will be a follow-up for part 2. It's pretty incredibly wild for me to sit here and think that I started this bookkeeping business and this consulting firm literally from nothing, and that it started over a year ago at this point. And here we are today, a happy, healthy, growing little business that is on the up and up. I can tell you how proud I am, but literally proud is an understatement. I don't think that there are adequate words to describe the feelings that I have inside of me on what we've done here with the firm in literally just 12 months. So if you know me, you know just how much I value transparency. So that's exactly what I'm planning on giving you guys for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to lay it all out on the table for you. We've talked a little bit before about the origin story of Clean Bee Consulting and how we became a firm, but today we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that origin story, and we're going to discuss some of the actual metrics behind our first year in business, which is pretty exciting for me. And then in part 2, which will be next week's episode, we're going to chat about some of the things that really worked for us as a firm over the last year. And then we're also going to talk about some of the hard truths that did not and have not worked for us over the last year as well, too. So let's get started. Over the last year, there is one question that I have gotten asked relentlessly, and that was, have I wanted or have I always desired to be an entrepreneur? And the short answer is absolutely not. Like, no, hard no. It was actually quite the opposite for me. I I thought that I have always thrived best taking direction from others. Yes, I do love managing and I do love helping others lead them towards common goals, but I always had a safety net where like there was somebody above my pay grade per se that I could go to whenever something came up that I just like wasn't experienced in. And on top of that, I have a very long, messy history of people pleasing and changing my personality to whatever it was that a former employer might have wanted me to be in that role. And that got really exhausting. I would say that the wheels started spinning in my brain back in July of 2023, which was when I lost my mom suddenly to heart complications. That point in my life actually served as a catalyst, and I didn't know it then, but it was going to start my entrepreneurial journey. Admittedly, her passing affected me in a big way and in a variety of ways. Like, if you think of Skittles and Taste the Rainbow, like, I was tasting the rainbow of grief with all of the feels all of the time. And, once she passed that summer, I remember going through all of her belongings at her home, and I found a one-sheet piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, that had a record of all of her teaching contract salaries that she had for her 2+ decade long career as a teacher in Central Florida with Orange County Public Schools. And honestly, it made me so sad. Obviously, I work in finance and I understand inflation and I understand cost of living adjustments and whatnot. But when I looked at that one piece of paper which summed up her entire career. Let's just say from start to finish, over 20 years, her salary did not increase more than $20,000 over those 20 years. So it basically equated down to she was receiving a $1,000 raise per year for the entire 2 decades that she was serving Orange County Public Schools as her employer. In fact, her highest paying salary as a teacher, which was in 2018, and this one pains me to say, it was less than what my starting salary was as a retail buyer for an e-commerce company that I started in 2015. That truly gutted me. And like I said, that is when the wheels in my brain started to turn. I was looking and longing for a connection with her after she passed, which is what led me to create my first business, Clean Bee Candle Company, a beeswax candle company that was inspired by the last gift that I ever sent my mom, which was a candle making set, which I won't dive into the nitty-gritties of the candle biz because we've already talked about it. Go back a few episodes to episode 16 called Candle Biz Pit Stops and Pivots. Give it a listen if you want to learn about my actual first toe dip into the entrepreneurial world. But that was my first taste at entrepreneurship. And I didn't start the candle business because I wanted to own my own business. That actually really wasn't even part of the reason why I started at all. I started that business because I was longing for creativity and something physical to do with my hands to keep the brain busy while I was going through some really sticky and heavy grief. So then often the next question that I get asked is what changed, because obviously I went from creating this candle business just for some connection, really, to leaving my full-time job and starting a second business from scratch. And the story behind that is that when I built the candle business, I built it alongside working full-time for another accounting firm, a firm that has its own laundry list of issues that bred a very toxic work environment for me. That environment pushed me way past my breaking point, where I was met with extreme burnout. And while I was experiencing that burnout, all I could think of while they tried to drag my mental health through the mud was that list of salaries that I found in my mom's house, which is funny because money was never an issue and money was never, it was never part of any of the reason why I enjoyed working at my prior accounting firm. I was paid well and had great benefits, but it was more about the principle of my mom's entire career was on one sheet of paper, and that there was a monetary value associated to it. And the fact that she devoted her career to advancing the dreams of others while never really getting to fulfill her own dreams. I don't know that teaching was what she always wanted to do, right? Maybe she wanted to have a candle business. She was a very creative individual, but we never got to talk about those things because her career kind of defined her, and it was all on one sheet of paper. And ultimately, letting someone else have the last say and never quite being treated the way that one deserves to be treated just didn't sit well with me. And when I paired that with my own childhood trauma, my dad was addicted to gambling, and he never really let my mom into the finances. She was left kind of completely in the dark until he passed away. And then she had to figure it all out on her own. Like, it was all this big storm that really helped me, I think, find my footing. I was faced with a pretty tough reality as a young woman in her early 30s without any parents around to kind of help me navigate through all of the things that were happening at that point. It really allowed me to put life into perspective. I didn't have an elaborate plan when I started Clean Bee Consulting and this bookkeeping and accounting firm. All I knew was that I absolutely could not continue to mask who I really was deep down inside, and that I absolutely had to get myself out of that toxic situation with my prior accounting firm. And I was prepared to dip as far down into my savings as I needed in order to find whatever it was that I was searching and longing for. All I kept circulating in my brain was that life is too incredibly short, and I was done working for shitty people. So then the next question comes, well, how did the consulting firm start? I would love to say that I set goals, that I planned things out, and that I was being smart in the moment in April 2024 when I decided to take this leap of faith on myself and start the consulting firm. That is so far from the truth, it's not even funny. I am usually that person that sets goals and has a plan and prepares and makes sure that I have every box checked. But that is what I had been doing historically with every single job that I encountered. And all it did was leave me feeling underwhelmed, exhausted, burnt out, and all of the negative feelings. So when I started the consulting firm in April of 2024, I literally had no plan. I wung it. And to be quite honest, to a point, I'm still winging it because it has felt so good over the last year. It's been very liberating and it's allowed me to get creative where I don't think I normally would have allowed myself to get creative. To let that one stick for a little bit. But in essence, how I got started was I created a bare bones basic website on Squarespace. I established a separate bank account and a separate credit card account. I set up a QuickBooks account so I had a financial database to track things in. And I set up a project management system so that I could keep track of all of the tasks that I had on hand. That was it. 5 things that you can do all in one hand to get started. And I really just focused on submitting proposals on Upwork. I know a lot of people shit on Upwork, but this business would not be where it is today if we had not gotten started on Upwork. By the end of April of 2024, I landed my first client in digital marketing, which was a very familiar industry with me. At my prior firm, I had worked with somebody in digital marketing for over 3 years. So it was familiar, it was comfortable, and this was on a smaller scale. So it was definitely something that was more manageable for me. And it definitely helped boost the confidence because A, I knew what I was doing, and B, it really only took me a week to get my first client, which is probably not the case for a lot of people starting a business from scratch. So they were a newly elected S Corp that needed payroll set up and managed. It wasn't even a bookkeeping role for like full bookkeeping services. But because the payroll setup and implementation and management worked so well, that contract ended up expanding into a full scope of work for a full charge bookkeeper for this client. And it was super exciting, right? I definitely had a confidence boost going out of April and transitioning into May. So in May of 2024, the momentum carried and I ended up signing 4 new clients, which was amazing. We opened our firm industries that we service currently, up to real estate, property management, wholesaling, talent agencies, and we even got our first motorsport client in month 2 of being up and operational, which was amazing. And of those new clients, 3 out of 4 of them came from Upwork. Again, you can see a common trend there for me. Just in that transition from April to May alone, our firm revenue increased by 90% too. So again, we were continuing to carry the momentum, and building that confidence that like we can do this, right? We're not just freelancers. Maybe we're actually building something that's worth a damn, is what was going on in my brain. So in June of 2024, that's when our metrics kind of started to stabilize. I really wanted to make sure that the quality of work did not fall away to taking on too many more clients. And two, I was pretty focused on not working more than 20 hours a week, let's say. So I stopped putting proposals out on Upwork and I really just focused on the clients that we had at the firm at that point. Then we start transitioning into July of 2024, which was another relatively static month as far as new clients went. We did end up signing another motorsport client, so now we're in, like, month, what, 4? And we already have 2 motorsport clients. Before we actually even started focusing on motorsport clients, which was pretty cool to look back and see on paper and, like, look at the data and the metrics, but the biggest change in July was revenue. Even though our client list wasn't necessarily growing, our revenue was up, which meant that our scope of work with the current clients we had was increasing and our contract rates with those clients were increasing. From June to July, our firm had another pretty stark increase in metrics, and our revenue rose by 67% from June, which is talk about another confidence booster. So here we are 4 months into the business, and I'm like really chugging along. Then August of 2024 came around. We signed another 3 new clients in August, which expanded our industry served to tech ed, merchant services, to think like credit card processing, and some coaching and authorship mixed in there as well too. We had another pretty big revenue increase that month where we saw a 40% revenue increase from July to August. And again, 2 of those 3 new clients were Upwork contracts, and the third was a network connection that I already had who actually reached out to me directly after seeing some of the social media posts that I was posting on LinkedIn. Moving into September of 2024, we had a pretty small increase in revenue, I'd say 9%. But hey, it's still an increase, right? We're still climbing up that ladder. The balance between revenue and quality of work was still at the forefront of my mind. We were really starting to grow at this point, which is amazing. And it was actually an indicator to me that it was time to say goodbye to the talent agency client. They just were not a good fit for our firm. And I'll talk more in part 2 next week about why, because I think that that's been a really big part of our success is recognizing when things are just not the right fit and not forcing them to fit. And I think that that's something that a lot of business owners kind of get tripped up on, trying to make something work because they really want it to work, when in reality, it's never gonna fit just right. So let's move into October then. So now we're at the 6-ish months in business. Again, we had another small increase, 8%. So we're continuing to increase our revenue every single month at this point. Our client roster stayed stagnant. We were focused on quality of work because, to be frank, I landed some of the biggest clients I ever worked on at that point. So it was a lot that I was trying to juggle, and I really did not want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want the quality of work to suffer. I really just wanted everything to work well and to be like a really well-oiled machine. And October is actually when the creative juices for the Full Throttle Finance program started to flow. And so I didn't necessarily want to tie up all of my brain space with client work because I wanted that time to be able to be creative and really develop this dream for Full Throttle Finance that I was envisioning, which again was a really big, important reason why I had to let go the client the month before. November 2024 was the first month where revenue did not increase for us. So it took 7 months of being in business before our revenue stopped increasing, and it actually went down a little bit. It decreased by 7%, which totally fine with, right? I'm still amazed that it took 7 months before we went backwards. Like that was 6 months of forward positive movement. And I don't think that that is a normal story for people who start their entrepreneurial journeys. But it's my story, so I'm sharing it. It wasn't because we lost any clients or anything. That's not why we saw a revenue decrease. It was actually mostly due to becoming super efficient with some of our hourly contracts, where we either couldn't or hadn't yet transitioned them into retainer contracts. So we were kind of making things more of an issue for ourselves because we were efficient and because we're badass at what we do. So there's another lesson that we'll talk about a little bit more in part 2 next week is hourly contracts versus retainer contracts and why you may or may not necessarily want one or the other. But also in November, it was a pretty pivotal month for us because that's when Alli came on board to help me, which really allowed us to make Full Throttle Finance what it's become today. December 2024, I'm going to dub as the game changer month for our firm. We signed another 4 new clients during December, and they were pretty much mostly all network connections. I had started to wean off of Upwork at that point since the firm was now 2 people. It wasn't just me freelancing, basically. But we signed 2 motorsport clients in the month of December, a copywriter, and a restaurant. 3 of these clients, too, were all local in Washington, which I absolutely loved because it allowed me to dig deep into community. And it was also weird because up until that point, I actually didn't have any clients in the Pacific Northwest. I don't even think I had clients actually in my own time zone, in Pacific time zone, up until December. So December really changed the game for us. And that's all a little bit weird because I'd only actually worked with Pacific Northwest or West Coast clients for probably the 3 to 4 years leading up to starting my own firm. December was also when Alli became a full-time employee on payroll at Clean Bee Consulting. And with that, our firm revenue also saw another pretty decent increase where we increased our revenue by 32% in the month of December. January of 2025, so we're in this fiscal year now, it was our best month on record, and which is no surprise, right? It's closing 2024, it's goal planning for 2025, it's making sure all of the wheels are in motion for 2025. It was pure chaos. I was super happy that the revenue rose alongside all of the work because I would have been really sad if it didn't. But our revenue rose by 17%, and we were chugging right along at that point. We signed another client in who's in a solar farming type industry, and January is also when we released our first Full Throttle Finance course, and it's when we launched our podcast. So January was quite chaotic, to say the very least. Moving into February of 2025, and we'll go ahead and say February, March, and April, because honestly, they've all been pretty stagnant. They've The revenue did dip slightly when you look at February through April in comparison to like December and January, but that was expected as the tax season started to come to a close for us. Our client roster has stayed pretty consistent while only losing one client, which that client we lost wasn't because they were upset with our services or because they weren't the right fit for our model or anything. We lost them just simply because they sold their business, which is definitely something that we can help with our clients too, making sure that those financials are nice and pretty for those potential investors or those potential buyers, and kind of aiding and helping you through the sales process of your business. So that kind of wraps up the metrics, as it were, for our first full year in business, as far as like looking at just the revenue side of things. We've been focusing on increasing contract rates with our current client roster. And we've really only been taking on referral clients or one-off projects for the last months, to be honest. I think it's pretty important to be kind of transparent about that because, again, like, I don't think that our story is the norm, but that doesn't mean that it can't be your story. And that also shows that it doesn't always have to be planned out, right? Like, sometimes planning forces you into this little bubble where there's so much more pressure on you. And I think one of the reasons why we've been able to be so successful in our first year of business, as far as securing clients and increasing revenue, is because I didn't I didn't cap myself, and I didn't really set really strict expectations for myself. I just allowed me to be me, because ultimately that's what I'm selling to the clients anyways. If you hire us to do bookkeeping work for you, you're hiring this, right? You're hiring what's in my noggin as far as my knowledge goes, and you're also hiring us for what's in our hearts, the type of people we are. And you can't really goal set with that kind of stuff, right? You kind of just have to show people, and it's kind of just something that flows naturally. So, putting the revenue metrics aside, there were some other metrics that I thought would be fun to kind of share with you guys that I'm proud of for our firm. So, at the end of April of 2025, we were servicing roughly about 26 different sets of books across 18 total different industries, which is wild to me. We serve clients that their businesses are registered in 8 different states across the United States, which, granted, I know that there's 50 states in the United States. 8 is just a small fraction of that. But there are a lot of firms out there that will only service clients in a specific state because it narrows down the knowledge that they have to have under their belt. But that's one thing for me over my entire career, is that I have actually always worked with a variety of different states and a variety of different tax laws and a variety of different everything. So I think it's pretty cool that we have clients that are registered in 8 different states. Payroll. We process payroll for 8 different clients on our client roster. And across those 8 clients, they have employees in over 10 different states, which, again, each state has its own unique requirements, its own tax laws, its own everything. And a lot of firms will kind of silo themselves to be like, we're only doing California, let's say, because California's labor code is very elaborate and we want to make sure that we, you know, don't bite off more than we can chew. That's not the case with our firm. I have been processing payroll. I think in some, I have registered and I've processed payroll between all of my collective experience across all of my accounting years in probably over 50% of the states in the United States. So again, that's a metric that I'm really, really proud of. And, all of this happened again in 1 year, starting from literally nothing, starting from a website that I built on Squarespace, a bank account, a credit card account, a project management system, and a financial report management system. And again, The only reason why I did any of that was because I was tired of working for shitty bosses. Not necessarily because I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur has just come naturally to me, if I'm being quite frank. So the last list of metrics that I've got to go over with you guys today is probably actually my favorite part of the list. Like, yeah, our own firm metrics on revenue and our client roster are things to be proud of, but those are our successes that we celebrate. We also celebrate our clients' successes because a lot of the times these projects that we work on with our clients, they only become reality for them because we help put the pen to the paper for them. And these are all things that we can help you set up and implement in your own program if you need help. So reach out to us if something that I'm about to say really resonates with you, because that's what we love most about our jobs at Clean Bee Consulting is helping our clients think outside of the box and to help them put the money back into their people. Because that makes a healthy work environment. And when you have a healthy work environment, your employees will show up for you better. So, some of the fun things that we've been able to help our clients achieve during our first year in business include starting a nonprofit, which is amazing. This particular client has a really, really big mission, and they couldn't get the full mission across the board with a poor for-profit company. And so they started a nonprofit to run alongside their for-profit business that really hits home on their mission and their core values as a company. And that's why that one's at the top of the list, because that's so awesome. And we help them set up the books for the nonprofit, and we help them manage the nonprofit and make sure that they're getting all of the legal things in a row for the nonprofit too. So we don't work just with for-profit businesses. We also work with nonprofit businesses as well. We have helped many clients that have come our way implement payroll and make sure that their employees are getting paid their wages for the work that they're doing, helping business owners determine bonuses and commissions and everything that is encompassed with the payroll realm, right? Like making sure they're registered in the states properly, making sure all of the payroll tax filings are getting filed and paid correctly, making sure that the software is doing its job, and making sure that it's syncing over to the financial report system like it should be. All 8 clients that we process payroll for, we've helped all of them get their payroll in a really sound position, which I love. We've helped clients hire outsourced HR because they have just grown to the point where it's not just something that the owner of the company and myself can manage, right? We wanted to make sure the employees were taken care of first and foremost. And to do that, we needed professionals that were HR professionals. A lot of our clients actually filed taxes on time without an extension for the first time this year. And that was in due part to us keeping up our end of the bargain of making sure their financials were tidy on a month-to-month basis and making sure that we were communicating to their tax preparers and their CPAs that everything was ready and that any questions came up along the way, we were able to answer and help that CPA or that tax preparer through whatever hurdle it was. We've helped clients literally set up a formal record keeping system from scratch. Some businesses that have been operating for maybe a year or two already that just didn't have that formalization of a full-blown accounting system. We came in, got it set up within a month or two, and then got them on a normal monthly cadence for financial reporting, which allows them to make better, more informed business decisions on the regular. We've helped clients implement profit-first methodologies, which has helped fund other goals that they have on their plate because we're separating those funds. We're assigning a purpose to every single dollar that's coming in the bank account, and we're letting the money work for them the way that they need the money to work for them. We've helped clients set up proper inventory systems and workflows. I cannot tell you the number of clients that I have worked with over the years that the inventory system just does not talk to the accounting system, and they're forcing the system to work a certain way where it is not designed to work, and it's actually way more cumbersome and way more labor intensive on their end than actually sitting down, doing the work, getting it set up properly, and letting the computer do the work for them, do the hard work and the heavy lifting for them. We have set up proper accrual workflows with deferred revenue and prepaid expenses and all of that jazz for some of our clients. If you don't know, you either file your taxes on a cash or accrual basis. And sometimes you find some people that have this like weird little mix of the two. And it's really important that your tax preparer and your bookkeeper are on the same page as to how you file your taxes and how you keep your financial records. That helps you pay taxes on the revenue when you're supposed to pay taxes on the revenue appropriately. And it also helps you understand when the real ebbs and flows in your revenue actually occur. We've helped our employers set up employee benefits like health insurance and home office stipends and maybe cell phone reimbursements and things like that. They're these benefits to employees that are maybe not taxable or like pre-tax or post-tax benefits, but it's ways that instead of paying the money in taxes to the government, because that's what they would have done eventually with that revenue, we put it back in their people to give their people a little something extra that is a thank you for showing up and doing the job, or for allowing space in your own home so where you can work remotely from. We've also helped employers set up company 401k plans and benefits, and making sure that compliance testing is happening and making sure that the payments are getting funded appropriately to the employee's account, and making sure that the employer contributions are flowing as they're supposed to be flowing. That's not something a lot of firms help with because they maybe don't have experience in that stuff, but that is something that we have experience with and that we help our clients with at CleanBee Consulting. We've helped set up really robust real estate portfolios in a platform that was designed to attract investors for some of our real estate clients as well too. We had to unravel a big mess that goes over multiple years of equity and getting all of the ducks in a row and getting everything straightened and everything aligned so that this investment portfolio actually matched all of the different financial records that came in tandem. And honestly, that is just like the surface level of some of the things that we've helped our clients set up. I'm just so proud of all of the work that we've been able to do and accomplish in this first year in business. Look, I'm getting teary-eyed just even thinking about it. But mostly it's a big thank you to our clients for trusting us, right? For taking a leap of faith with us, for allowing us to serve them, for giving us the space and the time to do the things that we need to do in the ways that we need to do, allowing us to change and modify the way they do things currently so that all of the systems talk to each other like they're supposed to talk to each other. Yeah, it's just super humbling. So, on that note, I think that's probably a good spot to wrap up part one of our special two-part firm anniversary episode. So I just wanted to say thank you first and foremost for sitting and listening to me blab about how fun our first year in business has been from the metrics side of life. It has not all been rainbows and sunshine though, although this episode might make it seem that way, which is part of the reason on why we're breaking this episode down into two parts for you. So make sure that you tune back in next week for part two, where we're going to talk about some of the things we weren't sure about that actually did work for us. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we thought were going to work for us that really did the opposite of working well for us as a firm and did not work at all for us. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye.